Scientists and medical researchers have for years differed over the exact definition of a pandemic, but one thing everyone agrees on is that the word describes the widespread occurrence of disease. Cholera, bubonic plague, smallpox, and influenza are some of the most brutal killers in human history, and outbreaks of these diseases across international borders are properly defined as pandemic, especially smallpox, which throughout history has killed between 300 to 500 million people in its 12,000-year existence.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Sixth cholera pandemic. Like its 5 previous incarnations, the sixth cholera pandemic originated in India, where it killed over 800,000 people before spreading to the Middle East, North Africa, Eastern Europe, and Russia. The sixth cholera pandemic was also the source of the last American outbreak of cholera. Flu pandemic. Originally the Asiatic flu, or Russian flu as it was called, this strain was thought to be an outbreak of the influenza A virus, subtype H2N2, though recent discoveries have instead found the cause to be the influenza A virus, subtype H3N8. The first cases were observed in May 1889 in 3 separate and distant locations: Bukhara in Central Asia, Athabasca in northwestern Canada, and Greenland. Third cholera pandemic. Generally considered the most deadly of the 7 cholera pandemics, the third major outbreak of cholera in the 19th century lasted from 1852 to 1860. Like the first and second pandemics, the third cholera pandemic originated in India, spreading from the Ganges River Delta before tearing through Asia, Europe, North America, and Africa, while killing over 1 million people. Flu pandemic. A category 2 flu pandemic, sometimes referred to as the Hong Kong flu. The 1968 flu pandemic was caused by the H3N2 strain of the influenza A virus, a genetic offshoot to the H2N2 subtype. From the first reported case on July 13, 1968 in Hong Kong, it took only 17 days before outbreaks of the virus were reported in Singapore and Vietnam, and within 3 months it had spread to the Philippines, India, Australia, Europe, and the United States. Asian flu. Asian flu was a pandemic outbreak of influenza A of the H2N2 subtype that originated in China in 1956 and lasted until 1958. In its 2-year spree, Asian flu traveled from Chinese province to Singapore, Hong Kong, and the United States. Antonine plague. Also known as the Plague of Galen, the Antonine plague was an ancient pandemic that affected Asia Minor, Egypt, Greece, and Italy, and is thought to have been either smallpox or measles. Though the true cause is still unknown, this unknown disease was brought back to Rome by soldiers returning from Mesopotamia around 165 AD. Unknowingly, they had spread a disease which would end up killing over 5 million people and decimating the Roman army. Plague of Justinian. Thought to have killed perhaps half the population of Europe, the Plague of Justinian was an outbreak of the bubonic plague that affected the Byzantine Empire and Mediterranean port cities, killing up to 25 million people in its year-long reign of terror. Generally regarded as the first recorded incident of the bubonic plague, the Plague of Justinian left its mark on the world, killing up to a quarter of the population of the Eastern Mediterranean and devastating the city of Constantinople. HIV pandemic. First identified in Democratic Republic of the Congo in 1976, HIV has truly proven itself as a global pandemic, killing more than 36 million people since 1981. Currently, there are between 31 and 35 million people living with HIV. The vast majority of those are in sub-Saharan Africa, where 5% of the population is infected, roughly 21 million. Flu pandemic. Between 1918 and 1920, a disturbingly deadly outbreak of influenza tore across the globe, infecting over a third of the world's population and ending the lives of 20 to 50 million people. Of the 500 million people infected in the 1918 pandemic, the mortality rate was estimated at 10% to 20%, with up to 25 million deaths in the first 25 weeks alone. The Black Death. From 1346 to 1353, an outbreak of the plague ravaged Europe, Africa, and Asia, with an estimated death toll between 75 and 200 million people. Thought to have originated in Asia, the plague most likely jumped continents via the fleas living on the rats that so frequently lived aboard merchant ships. Ports, being major urban centers at the time, were the perfect breeding ground for the rats and fleas, and thus the insidious bacterium flourished, devastating 3 countries in its wake.